Hello, everyone. Juxtaposition here. Hope everyone's having a wonderful day. You get your Juxtaposition 1 coffee mug and become a paid member of my channel, although you can get a mug without committing to annual or monthly payment schedule. Today's video will be entitled Brutal Truth, Teaching Methods. I am the business of education. I am a teacher. Of course, I'm backed up with Professor Engelstein of the Hooverstein Institute at Stanford. And I'm backed up by Chief Inspector Smythe for New Scotland Yard, who is a professional detective. I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. I have a helicopter behind my head here. You can't tell. I'm in my SR spy plane. I got a helicopter flying around me right now. So anyway, what else is new? This is the way it goes every day. Don't forget I had an F-14 Tomcat Grumman supersonic jet fly over my roof at 10 a.m. in the morning on 4th of July, as he had 48 hours later on Thursday at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm assuming it's the same plane. I got a real good look at him on Thursday morning. I got a real good headache from him on 4th of July. I didn't see him. He was going so friggin' fast by the time I looked through the trees and repositioned myself. Um, he was gone off to Santa Rosa. He's flying in a south to north pattern. I'm assuming he came from Lenore Navy Air Station in Fresno County, down by the Harris Ranch, which would probably take him about 20 minutes to fly from there to here in Mach 2 plus. All right. So my thesis today is that your average person, your typical person, 99% of the population are offended by truth. They're offended by it. People hate the truth. I remember I had a stakeholder of the Mormon church tell me once, yes, the truth will set you free. And of course, I set him straight. I said, what a bunch of hypocrisy that is. Uh, your Mormon church will fall apart if you start telling people the truth. Okay. People will abandon ship. It's like saying the Titanic is sinkable, right? No one's going to buy a ticket if you tell them that they don't have enough lifeboats and the ship can be sunk by an iceberg. If you said that, then you couldn't sell any tickets, right? Well, you couldn't run the LDS Mormon Church and you couldn't run the Church of Scientology. No one would do the audit. The audit. You wouldn't get the sacrament of confession at the Roman Catholic Church with Pope Leo, the dope of a Pope Leo. Pope Leo doesn't even know that that obelisk is from Switzerland. via via Cairo, the Egyptian pyramid of power stands in the center of St. Peter's Square. That's a brutal truth, right? That's a brutal truth that the Washington Monument is an obelisk of a chain of command controlled by Geneva, Switzerland, and that the swamp that Donald Trump used to refer to as a swamp, of course, he doesn't now that he lives in the swamp, uh, that Donald Trump is a puppet of Geneva global governance, right? Just he was, Harris, she was. And John Fitzgerald Kennedy, he was a puppet of Geneva Global Governance. And they can punch your light out anytime they want. We learned that lesson, did we not? All right, so that takes me to some more brutal truths. I'm going to pepper you with some examples and hopefully you will be offended. That's the whole point of today's video. I'm going to give you absolute truth that can be supported if you're willing to do the homework. Most people are not. Most people won't do the homework. Most people want to believe in poppycock, mendacity, and balderdash because, as Aaron Valente said, it's all a game. It's a thought experiment. We're living in the matrix. Now, if that's true, then you're going to embrace people like Dave McGowan, who is a published book author of many excellent titled books, which I'll give him credit. And his daughter, Alisa, runs, his daughter Alyssa runs his internet web page, which she has not updated in 4 years. So I think she sort of let it slide, right? She's not really operating the web page, but that web page is not any different than CieloDrive.com, which is a monument to mendacity regarding the Sharon Tate murders. Who's paying for that? Who's updating that? You know that the CIA sponsors Poppycock and Balderdash, right? They sponsor porn. They sponsor the opera. They sponsor the symphony. They sponsor the Rolling Stones, right? They support and help all the record companies, which are all owned by military radio frequency contractors, like CBS Records, Columbia Records, EMI, Capitol Records, RCA, Radio Corporation of America, where porn producer Jose Menendez worked at RCA, right? Hope you see that all the music that's produced, whether it's symphony music, opera music, classical music, or whether it's Taylor Swift wedding music at the Madison Square Gardens, whether it's gangster rap, whether it's Michael Jackson, King of Pop, right? Or whether it's Paul McCartney or Billy Shears pop music, matters not. It's all military controlled. It goes out on a military platform. The internet was created on porn and music. Those are the two drivers of internet searches. Internet searches are for porn and for your favorite music. That's why the military platform known as the internet, the nodes on the network, that was built for the military, 100%. The radio was built for the military. Telegraphy was built for the military. The railroads are built for the military. The port facilities are built for the military. Everything is for colonialism and imperialism. Airports and ports, those are built for the military, right? For transport, transportation of weapons, transportation of drugs, transportation of illegal immigration are done through the port facilities. So Donald Trump can build a wall, but then the KC-10 extenders will fly over the wall to land at a local airport and unload all the illegal immigrants. So the wall isn't to keep the immigrants out. The wall is designed to keep all the subject of the fascist Hunger Game in. It's to keep the Americans from fleeing and escaping. We have Real ID, we have TSA agents now at every airport facility and every port facility to make sure that you've got your Real ID. And if that doesn't work, whenever you land in Marseille or if you land in at another port facility in Sydney, Australia, you will be asked for your Real ID and you'll have be subjected to a facial recognition, palm print, iris read, and check your vax status, your inoculation status, your compliance within Geneva Global Governance. Geneva Global Governance sets the policy for immigration and travel worldwide because there's only one world and there's only one bank. It's the Swiss bank. It's UBS and the Bank for International Settlements. That's the center of banking. I understand there's hundreds of small banks. They all are dependent on a bigger bank, who in turn is dependent upon their Federal Reserve System, who reports to Basel, Switzerland. So there's one centralized control of all financial institutions, period. That includes the insurance industry, the mutual fund industry, Goldman and Sachs, Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan Chase, America, Merrill Lynch, yeah, same thing. They're all the same. BlackRock, Blackstone, uh, Thomas Leibowitz, who went by Thomas Lee, Thomas H. Lee. His name is Leibowitz. Could be Michael Milken, Drexel Burnham. Uh, Makes no difference whatsoever. So let's just review Dave McGowan's books, for example. He died at age 55, kind of young, right? So that's suspicious, but he's best known for weird scenes inside the canyon. He's referring to Laurel Canyon and covert operations and the dark heart of the hippie dream, which was published in 2014. Okay, I have no problem with that. That's a good title, by the way. But I got a problem with Dave McGowan because he went to UCLA and he doesn't have a lot of personal experience. The difference between the Juxtaposition One show and me, Juxtaposition, is my stories are based on my personal life experience. That's not true with Dave McGowan. Okay, Dave McGowan didn't have a record deal with RCA, right? Um, Neither did I. However, I did work for the accounting firm that audited RCA records in Century City, and I worked for Ernst and Ernst, and they audited almost all of these criminal enterprises that I became acquainted with through their employees and contractors. So I personally met Ronald Reagan. I personally met George Shultz, who was Secretary of State when I met him. When I met Ronald Reagan, he was president-elect, but had yet to take the oath of office. I met him in early January 1981. So he was going to take the oath of office standing near Lucio Gelli, who had installed Juan Perón, Augusto Pinochet, Salvador Allende, um, Aldo Moro. In other words, just another day at the office for a fascist. Lucio Gelli is a fascist who lives in Florence, in Tuscany, Italy, and spends a lot of time in Geneva, as he is the Grand Master of Propaganda Due. Propaganda Due. The members refer to themselves as the Black Friars, the Black Friars. And they have to kill bankers from time to time who go off course, like Roberto Calfi did, like Michele Sedona did, right? Like Paul Castellano did, right? Like Sam Giancana did, like Sully did, like Lucky Luciano did, like John Paul the First did, right? Because the Pope doesn't run the Catholic Church. The Bank of Vatican runs the Catholic Church, and the Bank of Vatican reports to Geneva, Switzerland, and Swiss Bank Authority. Anyway, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon by Dave McGowan supports the idea that Charlie Manson and the Manson family killed Sharon Tate. So right there, that's a major problem. That's completely false, and it's not true. There's no evidence to prove that. So I don't know that Dave McGowan has even been on Cielo Drive like I have. I've been on Sunbrook Drive. Which is the Sunbrook Drive is where the killers walked up the ice plant to kill everyone on the property. All right, and they came and showered up and prepared in four houses that were on border the subject property. They also were staying directly below the murder scene at 1048 Cielo Drive, which actually is on Cielo Drive. And that is a doppelganger twin house. So they practiced and rehearsed at 10048. 10048 Cielo Drive is the rehearsal house. Right? Now it's been torn down and rebuilt, and the murder house has been torn down and rebuilt and assigned to a Hollywood television producer director um, by the name of Mr. Franklin. All right. Oliver Silverstein Stone has visited the Timothy Leary house at 10106 Sunbrook Drive. And certainly there would have been a number of the murderers would have taken showers in that house. That is one of the four houses that's on Sunbrook Drive. And Oliver Silverstein has gone over to give a get well card to Timothy Leary before he died on St. Patrick's Day, 1996. That was around March 17th, March 16th, something like that. You can check the date. It was a Sunday, St. Patty's Day Sunday, March 1996. Oliver Stone visited the murder scene for Abigail Folger, who bled out just above where Oliver Silverstein would have parked his car in the driveway, just literally 35 seconds away. No one doesn't go into detail. I don't know that he's been to any of these murder scenes. He mainly talks about, Jimi Hendrix and he talks about Carlos Santana and the people who had record deals in the 1960s, Janis Joplin, etc. Well, that's just Ducky, but those are just kids. None of those people were in charge of anything, right? The best work that Dave McGowan did is is having to do with fascism. Okay, he actually wrote a book about the F word, and the F word means fascism. And I got to hand it to him. So he's most famous for Laurel Canyon and Weird Occurrences, um, okay, Covert Ops. But he wrote a book on serial murder and power structures about, Manchurian candidate concepts of program to kill. Well, you don't, that's what the United States Marines are for, right? That's what the United States Navy is for. That's what the United States Navy SEALs are for. That's what the Black Ops and the Army are for, or the Green Beret. They're programmed to kill also. My brother was programmed to kill. He was in the Marines. They have a whole facility in Virginia called the Farm where they train um, armies from all over the world, including Israeli soldiers and all American forces and South American forces and South African forces are trained to kill in Virginia at the Farm. So it's not an MK Ultra program. I want to get off this MK Ultra kick. Tom O'Neill doesn't know anything about MK Ultra. Charlie Manson had nothing to do with MK Ultra. Okay, Jack Ruby's not involved with MK Ultra. They're just pawns in the game. Remember Aaron Valente? She said it's all a game. It's a thought experiment. We're in the Matrix. Tom O'Neill needs to go back to being a gay waiter in West Hollywood. He doesn't know anything about authoring a book, doesn't know anything about research. He knows nothing about MK Ultra, and I think MK Ultra is just like a made up thing. I mean, it's pacification and control, and teaching people to obey and respect the chain of command. We follow orders or people die. It's just that simple. Dave McGowan wrote a book on serial killing and power structures. Hey, good for him. But he's not going to name the shooter for JFK, and neither am I. I don't know who the shooter is. Military, guarantee you. The Zodiac killers, plural, were military trained soldiers. American Fascism and Illusion, published in 1997, in Understanding the F Word, American Fascism and the Politics of Illusion. Dave McGowan critiques what he sees as a systematic political and cultural force which promotes authoritarianism under the guise of democracy. Well, duh. Yeah, that's what we have. You don't have a democracy. And by the way, a democracy could never work in real life because you can see, just look at my neighborhood where I have a very upper, wealthy, upper class neighborhood. And my people in my neighborhood are dumber than a box of hammers and they're incredibly lazy. They would rather watch FIFA soccer games or go to the opera than to pull out the smart meters that have been installed without their permission and the LED streetlights, which were installed without their consent, without notification. They don't care about all the military weapons in their system. They don't care about the airplanes. They don't care about the airplanes flying over their head, dumping aluminum chalk on their rose gardens, because most of my neighbors have rose gardens. They don't care. They don't care. They care about porn and they care about the symphony and the opera and they care about the Fourth of July parade, which are all the same thing. The Fourth of July parade and watching porn, it's the same thing. Waste your time. That's it. If you want to go to the opera, that's great. But you're wasting your time just like you would be if you were at the Fourth of July parade or watching porn. I mean, you're not paying attention to what's going on in your strategic hamlet. You don't even know you live in a strategic hamlet, a mapped corridor. Okay, then Dave McGowan wrote The Lincoln Assassination, where he produced extensive research and essays about why everything you think you know about the Lincoln assassination is wrong. Yeah, well, it looked like a military gladio hit to me. Okay, then he did a book on the Boston Marathon bombings, which that looked like a military psyops operation. That's fine. I got no problem with any of those topics of Dave McGowan. I got no problem at all. But I happen to know that if I wrote a book, it wouldn't get published. And I happen to know if Dave Gregg, a world-class chemist at the Department of Energy, if he wrote a book, which by the way, he did write a book, he couldn't get it published and distributed by book publishers because it's It's too truthful. So he self-published it, paid thousands of dollars to self-publish, and he handed it out at cocktail parties and gave it away as Christmas gifts, even though Dave was an atheist. But anything to get that book out there. But he had to give it away for free, like YouTube does. Remember, YouTube was based on music and free content, and most free content is poppycock content. So that means that Google and YouTube is poppycock. Now, I've had over 200 videos posted on YouTube and deleted, 200 deleted videos, and I've been lifetime banned there. Now, I still have about 200 videos remaining at YouTube that snuck through a hole in the fence. They banned me, but they didn't ban Substack. So whenever I post on Substack, Substack entered into a affiliation agreement with YouTube without my knowledge, and they share posts on their platform, and YouTube reposts. They repost the Substack. So because I've been a member of Substack for about 2 years, my videos are sneaking in through the hole in the fence. What do you think? What do you say about that? Now, YouTube has the greatest concentration of profane, clueless people, and I do get posts on my videos, which generally are a mix. I would say it's 1/3 positive and 2/3 negative, which is pretty good. You'd expect it to be 99% negative because people that are, wanting to rely on free content at YouTube, they're going to get all their sport information incorrect. They're going to get all their music information incorrect. They're going to get everything incorrect. There are some fun things at YouTube, generally speaking, the music, but it's all about wasting people's time. That's the whole point. So you can waste your time with me and perhaps get educated with brutal truth. Let's pivot for a moment away from Dave McGowan, who I think is a what we call a controlled opposition. He's just like Oliver Stone. He's just like Lawrence Schiller. He's just like Dominic Dunn. He's much like Joan Didion. In other words, he tells you what you already know, okay? But he doesn't go anywhere near being a UCLA graduate. He went to UCLA, but he doesn't seem to know that there's are from the Air Force Disney Underground Studios. He talks about Lookout Mountain, but he doesn't seem to know that Timothy Leary lived on Lookout Mountain and that Charlie Watson lived on Lookout Mountain, and the United States Air Force has a 100,000 square foot underground facility on Lookout Mountain, and that the Wonderland murders of bludgeoning 5 people, 4 of whom died, is basically one walking tunnel distance away. I mean, it's 2 houses away, 2 to 3 houses away. I mean, that's kind of an important fact. If I went to UCLA and I didn't know that, I would say you're not paying attention, pal. I mean, that's in your wheelhouse, right? I mean, you know where UCLA is. It's in Westwood. It's right next door to P. Diddy. I mean, you could walk. You don't have to get in a car. You could walk from the UCLA library to P. Diddy's house. And you could walk to Cynthia Beck's home, who's Gordon Getty's girlfriend. She has 1,000 AR-15 rifles in her basement. Hey, Cynthia, can you give me a free AR-15 rifle, semi-automatic assault rifle? Dave McGowan didn't write about that. He didn't write about William Paley's house and the underground tunnel that it has. And that was P. Diddy's house. P. Diddy got it eventually after William S. Paley, the chairman of the board of CBS and the CEO of CBS. He lived in P. Diddy's house before P. Diddy did. And his next door neighbors were Judy Garland, and on the other side was Humphrey Bogart. And then the next house is the Playboy Mansion. Playboy Mansion with Hugh Hefner. Now he came later. He came along later, 1974, I think, the Playboy Mansion opened, and by then Humphrey Bogart, I believe, had died. So let's move on to my favorite clown in the circus, who's in the news, um, Paul Pelosi. Paul Pelosi is married to the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Okay, and there's all kinds of symbolic signs and symbols. The Pelosi's have multiple homes, but number two, Zinfandel Way in St. Helena, Napa County, is the home that they seem to want to spend time on in the summer. And this is where Paul Pelosi was headed on Friday, July 3rd at 2:30. But he crashed in. So it looks like a car parked at 6700 Yount Street in the town of Yountville, which is, in case you didn't know, it's 3.5 miles away to his gate to his home, which is number two Zinfandel Way. You know he's got an obelisk right on the other side of that gate on his driveway. It's got an obelisk. So Nancy and Paul Pelosi have an Egyptian chain of command on their driveway to remind them who they work for, which is Swiss Bank Authority. Swiss Bank Authority is who Paul Pelosi, who is a retired banker, I don't know if he's retired. I don't think anyone ever retires. He's 86 years old now. Anyway, he crashed into a car that was parked with no driver. Nobody died. Paul Pelosi is driving a $300,000 Cabriolet Maserati. Those things start at 160,000 and go up to $330,000. Don't forget, this is literally less than a mile. About 1,400 meters from 67 Yount Street to where he totaled his Porsche Carrera Super Sport performance car, which is $270,000. He totaled a $270,000 car walking distance from where he plowed into a parked car on Yount Street in Yountville. Now, did he stop and put his name on his business card and tuck it into the windshield so that the driver could call him? Did he knock on the door of the house there? By the way, 6,700 is 13, right? Unity amongst Masons. So I don't know if the car was exactly where they said it was or not, but that's what the media reported, that the car that Paul Pelosi crashed into then fled, hit and run, which is a felony. It is a felony, but the media will tell you it's a misdemeanor because the media lies like a rug. So he didn't stop. He kept going. And 2 blocks up north, he's heading north on Yount Street. You'll hit Yountville Cross Road. He made a right hand turn and went very short distance for his front right fender had collapsed on his front wheel and his car was disabled about a half a mile from where he hit and run, crashed into the parked car. So he wasn't arrested and alcohol was not suspected. I don't know why. He's a convicted DUI driver. He just got off probation, just got off 3 years of probation. Remember, he totaled his Porsche the Oakville Crossroad at Laurel Avenue, which I told you is less than 1 mile away. The grocery store there at the Philippe Rothschild Vineyard and Opus One tasting room. Paul Pelosi totaled a $270,000 Porsche Carrera. That was back on May 28th, 2022. So here it is. Here it is, 4 years later. He didn't total his car and he didn't total their car, but he put substantial damage into it because he hit it from behind. So he has damaged his Maserati, which that's going to cost quite a bit of money to fix his Maserati. Plus, he has to fix the other person. But Nancy Pelosi wants you to know they have apologized to whoever the owner of the car is. They haven't reached out, they haven't contacted, they don't know who the owner of the car is, right? But Paul says that he'll gladly pay for the damage. Yeah, but you were fleeing, and had you gotten away, you weren't going to pay, right? You were going to blow it off. But don't forget, it's not Paul Pelosi's first rodeo. He killed his brother in 1957 in February, February 22nd, 1957. He rolled a Porsche at age 16, killing his 19-year-old older brother in the passenger seat. He killed his older brother when he was 16 years old. Then he totaled that Porsche. Then he was engaged in a styrofoam hammer attack at Nancy's security house, 2640 Broadway in Pacific Heights, San Francisco. Paul Pelosi doesn't live in that house. Nancy Pelosi doesn't live in that house. Her guards live in that house. You can tell because they got the big black SUV with the tinted windows parked right in the front of that house, 2640, which is a 3333, right? Broadway. 2640 Broadway, Pacific Heights. They live 1 block away, straight up Divisadero Street to Pacific Avenue, and then one house east. It's their house. It's the only home that has a four-car garage because Paul Pelosi needs a lot of cars. You can see he crashes his cars with great regularity, right? That's a brutal truth. That's a brutal truth. And I had a person at YouTube actually contest me on that. Mr. Pelosi, how can you imply that he's a criminal? I'm not implying it. I'm stating it overtly. He's a criminal. He's a convicted drunk driver. He's a drunkard banker. He got his banking gig when Abigail Folger got bayoneted to death, where Oliver Silverstein goes to parties with Timothy Leary at 10106 Sunbrook Drive. Abigail Folger was killed. She died. Within 30 days, Paul Pelosi opened up a leasing company in San Francisco at age 29. Abigail was 26 or was going to be 26 on Monday. On the Monday after, before she died or after she died, she was just going to be 26 years old, but she got bayoneted 28 times to death. That gave rise to Paul Pelosi's entire career. And I believe that Paul took over Enos Mejia's book of business in Haight-Ashbury, which Abigail was probably going to get that gig. She was being groomed for that gig to take over her mother's job. But Paul Pelosi appears to have gotten that job. And no wonder he's a drunkard. Okay. He was a poor driver when he was a teenager. He killed his brother. I don't know if there was alcohol involved in that. It was a Friday night car crash on Skyline Boulevard in San Mateo County, near Tanitas Creek, right above Woodside. If you don't know, it's near the Crystal Springs Reservoir. And it's a very expensive area. It's where Patty Hearst grew up in Hillsborough. That's where Paul Pelosi killed his brother, near where Patty Hearst grew up. It's also where Charles Ng lived for a few years. He went to school. Charles Ng's a serial killer of a minimum of 25 people. He's a United States Marine, even though he is not an American citizen. He's a subject of the realm. He's born in Hong Kong. He's a British citizen, but he was an American Marine with Leonard Lake, killing people and cremating, killing and cremating, killing and cremating. And he spent time where Patty Hearst was raised as a child before she became a bank robber, right? From Tanya of the Symbionese Liberation Army. I hope you're paying attention. Those are brutal truths. It's a brutal truth that a serial killer lived in Hillsborough and went to the Upland Academy there at Crystal Springs Reservoir. That's a brutal truth. It's embarrassing. I don't think the school wants you to know that. It's a brutal truth that Patty Hearst went to the Menlo College right there off of Valparaiso. That's embarrassing. It's a brutal truth that the Sacred Heart Convent forbade Eunice Mejia, Abigail Folger's mother, from graduating from high school from the Sacred Heart Academy School for Girls, 150 Valparaiso. That's a 33. If you 1 plus 6 is a 33. That's the Catholic nunnery for the Sacred Hearts, which was born during the French Revolution to pacify, control, hoodwink, deceive the resistors of authority of Swiss bank authority. Switzerland ran Paris during the French Revolution. Switzerland ran Paris during the French Revolution. It's another brutal truth that most people don't believe. They had 1,500 Swiss grenadiers guarding Marie Antoinette and King Henry XVI. They were in charge of the Bastille Armory. They had 32 Swiss officers there at the storming of the Bastille. They all got out of their uniforms, put on their street clothes, and walked across the moat so that they wouldn't get arrested by the renegade revolutionaries of France on July 14th, 1791, I believe. Um, all right, so the Dave McGowan story is morphed to the Center of Informed America, which his daughter is running, but she hasn't updated the thing in almost 4 years. So I don't think she's paying attention anymore to promoting her father. Maybe the royalties checks have fallen way off. So I'm in favor of discussing fascism. The problem is that we've always had fascism. It's not a new thing. It's not an illusion. It's the way it is. You're indoctrinated this way through school to believe that George Washington is not in a cult when he was. He's a Mason and he follows his orders. And so is Paul Revere, who works for the banks. He mints coins. What do you think coins are for? They're for the banks. He worked for banks. He gets paid by banks. Paul Revere and George Washington and Harvard University and Yale and Princeton. They all work for Switzerland, 100%. So it's all just an act. Ronald Reagan was an actor most of his adult life, from at least age 28 until his death. He worked for Swiss Bank Authority, Ronald Reagan. He was an actor in Hollywood for propaganda films and training films in Culver City for Warner Brothers. Then he did cowboy movies. Then he was the president of the Screen Actors Guild, which is a surveillance organization. And then he was the governor of California. Well, pardon me, he was the spokesman for General Electric. He was a unrepentant Democrat. He was a liberal Democrat, and then he flipped the switch and became a conservative Republican, became governor of California, then president of the United States. All acting jobs. No, it's an acting. Schwarzenegger had that job after Ron Reagan. Isn't Arnold Schwarzenegger a steroid beauty queen, Screen Actors Guild actor? Yeah. So Arnold Schwarzenegger is as authentic as a governor as Ronald Reagan was, right? And look at all the odious people that have been pseudo presidents: Obama, Clinton, LBJ, Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon actually looks good compared to the current crop. Trumpster. Trumpster belongs in a dumpster, Trumpster, right? Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, eating his lunch through a straw, Sleepy Joe. Get vaxxed and boosted, get vaxxed and boosted. Sleepy Joe, Operation Warp Speed, Trumpster belongs in a dumpster. Yeah, it's disgrace. But those people are not in charge. Donald Trump has no authority whatsoever. Yes, he signed the big beautiful bill, which will unload half of all the public land to Switzerland, but Switzerland already controls it. So it's just a symbolic gesture. Just like Dave McGowan, he's a symbolic gesture for truthers. He will only stay on the surface. He will not bear down. He won't go into the tunnel system along Wonderland Avenue. He won't do it. But I will, right? And I'll talk about the tunnel system under Sunset Boulevard, under the Los Angeles Golf Course Country Club, and Cynthia Beck, Gordon Getty's girlfriend. Only on my channel will you hear about Gordon Getty's girlfriend, because that's one of my methods of brutal truth. I'm an educator. I am educating you, trying to entertain you too. All right. So gambling, Las Vegas, Atlantic City. Okay, that's pacification and control. But then they do sports book, right? They want people to watch sports, which are mostly fixed and rigged and dope sports. Tennis, soccer, cycling, it's all doped. And they cheat other ways besides doping. There's you could do the whole thing without anyone taking drugs, but they all take drugs. It's just required. Uh, Violence, Joe Rogan, he promotes mixed martial arts. He gets paid to promote it. WWE, Donald Trump's all over that. Worldwide entertainment, boxing, doped, rigged, doped and rigged, doped and rigged. Isn't wrestling fake? Isn't wrestling fake? I mean, not at the Olympic level, but at the I mean, it's doped at the Olympic level, but at the TV level, Jesse Ventura was involved with wrestling and Hulk Hogan and Hulksterville. It's fixed, it's rigged, it's scripted, right? So Jesse Ventura, he was governor of Minnesota. He's fake. He's a fake Navy SEAL that never served in Vietnam, but he's an important person. He thinks you should get vaccinated and get over it. But he is a chicken hawk. He never was in active battle in Vietnam, ever. Nobody aimed an AR-15 rifle at him or an AK-47 at him. He didn't get fragged. All right, so we have all the athletes are on drugs. You gamble on sports. That's a form of pornography. If you watch porn, if you watch sports that's doped, if you go have season tickets to the opera, that's like porn, right? The symphony, that's like porn, because you're taking hours out of your day to go be pacified. Sure, it's nice. I mean, I love music. I like the symphony. I like the opera. But when you're doing that, you're not hunting down addresses for private bankers, are you? You're not trying to find out where their home at Lake Tahoe is. You're not finding out which cul-de-sac in Atherton they live on, or where in Seacliff or Pacific Heights is their house. It takes time too. track down all these people that are turning you into a techno slave. You're already a slave, but they want to have flock cameras and they want to have digital IDs tethering you to the cloud 24/7. They want to pollute your water and have you eat bugs. I think we're going way, way, way beyond proper handling of prisoners at the county jail because you're basically being handled in a highly disrespectful way. You're being treated like a dairy cow or a meat cow. And that's what these bankers who are in these enclaves, they're ranchers, they're farmers, they're domesticating you. It's called human husbandry. You know, I woke up in 1956 and I fell in love with the past. That's how I feel. I feel like I want to go back then. Everything was corrupt back then too. It just, I didn't know. So the Pope is a dope, okay? The Bank of Vatican runs the Catholic Church. They're still looking for Emmanuel Orlandi, who's still missing, and she's the daughter of the number two person at the Bank of Vatican, Corla Orlandi. That was his daughter who was kidnapped and done away with. And Pope Leo's not concerned about that. He wants to disable the AI, but he's not concerned about cryptocurrency or central bank digital currency. He's not concerned about human augmentation. He's not concerned about CRISPR therapeutics and neuromodulation, MIMS and MIMOs, MOSA and SOSA. He's not concerned. Not concerned about flock cameras. He's not concerned about smart meters and ring cameras. Means the That's what that means. Pope Leo is a dope, and he just excommunicated a couple of Swiss cardinals. And, the Pope doesn't have the authority to excommunicate Swiss nationals, right? Just like Donald Trump doesn't have the authority to fire the head of the Fed. And Donald Trump doesn't have the authority to fire the CI director, right? He does not have the authority. Richard Nixon didn't have the authority to fire William Colby. Neither did Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford did not have the authority to do that because the CI director does not work for the president. They work for global governance from Geneva, Geneva Global Governance, GGG. All right, those are some brutal truths today. Dave McGowan, that's fine if he gets you interested, but you're never going to learn anything substantive from Dave McGowan. Absolutely not. I do recommend Mad Magazine. I think Mad Magazine is a better source of truth than Dave McGowan's books. And even though I love Dave McGowan's book titles, you're not going to learn anything from Tom O'Neill and Chaos. You're not going to learn anything, well, nothing to do with human augmentation and Swiss bank control. You're not going to learn anything about that. You can learn about uh, Kurt Gentry's partner, Vincent Bugliosi, and that he's a philanderer and had secret families and engaged in wiretapping and kidnapping. He kidnapped a 5-year-old child of his milkman, believe it or not. And that's fascinating, but has nothing to do with how we run our world. The world is run by Geneva Global Governance and Swiss Bank Authority. All right. And that's particularly obvious when you look at how Paul Pelosi is handled in the legal system. He's handled the way Scott Erickson is, which is um, nothing to see here, keep moving, and you never spend a night in jail. You don't spend a single night in jail if you're Paul Pelosi or Scott Erickson. You are, you may be detained, but you are released quickly. That's how they handled Paul Marcinkus. That's how they handled Tony the Big Tuna or Curdo. And that is how they handle Paul Pelosi. In other words, they're special people within the Hunger Game. You live in a Hunger Game. Thanks for listening. Do like and share my videos. I am heavily shadow banned. Bye now.